Now that's Ben on his birthday when he turned 5 on the campground, and we had a cake from the village. And
So this is like the year before he got glasses.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was our very, very first camping trip.
Really?
Ben wasn't even 4 years old. Remember, we borrowed a tent.
From the ex-nurse?
Yeah, and we went to Big Hill Springs.
Right.
We were just beside the little spring.
Yeah. There we are, the 4 of us Martini boys. Nick and Liv, my 2 oldest brothers, myself, Clem, and Ben, the youngest. I guess I'd say we were your average kind of family. And Ben was, if anything, the most normal of us. Bright, happy. He excelled in school, did well at sports, had lots of friends. Then we found out that Ben had schizophrenia, and our family was never the same.
That was the last summer.
Yeah. See, yeah, I can remember this. He didn't want to have his photo taken. That's the summer that he...
Yeah, and he would always kind of pull faces.
Yeah, he'd say strange things. He was very withdrawn then.
Yeah.
That's the summer I kind of went to talk with him to figure out what was going on.
Looking at pictures of the past, I see Ben here, the year he turned 5. Perfectly happy little boy. One of the happiest birthdays. And then I look, many years later, one of the last pictures. And the change. And the change had come so sudden. Here he's 5. Here he was 17. And at 17, all of a sudden, a person is so different. It's very hard to understand.
I knew something was wrong during the summer that he left school. That is, he graduated from grade 12 and he had a summer to get a job, and he didn't get a job, and he didn't do anything, really. He kind of moped around. You call it mope around. He'd go out for a job every once in a while and would come back, and he'd be around the house for days on end. So I knew that something was wrong, but you think, well, it's hard to get a job. He's just depressed. One day he was really irritating people at the dinner table, like being aggressive. I said, I want to talk with you. And we went outside, because you can't talk around the house. There's too many people in too many years. So we went out into the lawn, and I said, what's going on with you? And he says, I don't know, I think that I'm losing it.
It started off by him being exceedingly lethargic, and then all of a sudden going into frenetic bursts of energy, and then wanting to run away. And in the height of winter, we had an extremely cold winter. He would take off, he froze his face. He had walked about 20 miles.
3 a.m. one night, he came down to my bedroom and knock, 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 and I wake up. It's pitch black. And I said, what is it? And the door opens, and there he is. And he's got this stack of books. He says, they're all trying to talk to me, and they're all trying to control my life. And if I don't arrange them in a certain order, they can get to me. And he says, look at my glasses. He's wearing glasses. I was walking along, and suddenly this thumbprint appeared. And he says, a ghost put it there. And he says, now, I peeled that scratch off my glasses like a scar. It just came off. And I put it in this Kleenex here. And I want you to take it to the pharmacist, and I want you to have it analyzed. Because depending upon what it is, he says that'll give us the key, the clue to who's trying to get in touch with me from this other dimension. Ben was always around the house at this point. He was always somewhere, and he developed phobias. He felt my older brother, Liv, was a member of the FBI because he wore black shoes. And he thought that Dad was in touch with some kind of other governmental sources. So he's suspicious of everyone. So you couldn't talk at the house. So I phoned my oldest brother from work, and I said, look, we'll meet at the bar. And I said, Nick, you got to help me out on this because Ben's really crazy. And he says, well, explain to me what's going on. And I said, and I explained to him, but he still didn't believe me because no one wants to believe it. And from then on, we had all these clandestine meetings. I had to take Mom over to Nick's to talk to Mom. Dad had to be met somewhere else, all out of the house, because if it was in the house, Ben would have split. He'd go.
He had turned into a stranger, a person that wasn't the young man he had been. He had been outgoing, he had been interested, he had been active, and all of a sudden he became more cynic than an 80-year-old man.
I phoned up the hospital to find out what I could do with Ben, because I thought there must be someone who helps you out when you have someone who's not going to go to the hospital willingly. They all talk about the people in the white jackets. It's a cliche. There's no one in white jackets. They told me, look, you can either wrestle him and bring him in, or you call the police, and the police come and take him in. Well, I don't want to call the police. I don't want to call the police on my brother. So we hesitated. We're all the time saying to Ben, you got to go get help, but he won't. Mom tried to take him to a psychiatrist, tries to drive him in. He jumps out of the car and runs off. The next day, he takes off again, and Mom sends my two older brother, Liv and Nick, after him. And it turns into a real punch-up. And that day, my mother called the police. It was all a mess.
You find out there is a disease of which you know very little. You don't know what to expect. And by you get the feeling, a similar feeling that I've had in the war after air raids. You know somewhere there was a bomb coming down. And you wonder where it is and will it go off. And times when it hits in your family and you don't know what to expect and what will be around the corner, you get the same eerie feeling as sitting on top of a time bomb that may go off and may not.
Ben hated the hospital, hated the treatment, and for a time hated us for putting him in there. He ran away 4 times. It was a long time before anyone would tell us that Ben had schizophrenia, and when they did, no one said, this is what happens next. No one told us anything. The last time I saw him, he was on sleep therapy and drugged up, and he was eating spaghetti and meatballs, and he kept chasing this meatball around the dish and couldn't get it. He couldn't even eat, and he kept chewing his lip. So I said, look, I'm going away, I'll be back. And he says, oh, so you're leaving me? I tried to tell him that I was going to come back. But for him, it was all over. It was just like, oh, he's gone. And that's the way I left him, right? And as it turned out, I never saw him again. He was very depressed because with the drugs, he is very infirm. And he shook and his face swelled up. And he told my brothers that he felt a little like he looked like a retard, People would stare at him and stuff. Anyways, he was kind of lonely because the friends that he had in high school had all gone on to jobs, and they'd all got jobs and they had girlfriends and things. So So, he bought a gun. Well, he borrowed some money from a fellow we know. And he bought a rifle. And he went to the basement. And he shot himself. And I didn't, I didn't know about it. I found out about it in France. I phoned home. I received a telegram. And I got hold of my mother. And she said he's dead. So I flew home. Anyways. Anyways, that's Ben. After Ben died, we took his ashes to the mountains and scattered them on a hill near a large pine. We call it Ben's tree now and visit it whenever we have a chance. It should have been, we thought it was, the end of our struggle with schizophrenia. But as it turned out, it wasn't. Even now, I don't like to think back to that time. For months after, I'd wake up believing, honestly believing, that it had all been a dream. Same when I'd walk home sometimes. I'd think, I'll come around the corner and see him in the yard. In retrospect, I think we all felt something like that, but we couldn't talk about it. There's so much guilt. You think, I should have done this, said this. So you don't talk, and you just get by. Hi. Hi, Chandra. We all moved on and out. Nick got married. I left the city to study playwriting. My parents, of course, were shattered by the event. They got a divorce a while later. When we did get together, we never spoke about Ben. My father, especially, when he was alive, felt that the story of Ben was just too painful, too personal, and somehow shameful to talk about. There we go. Is it a good hot dog?
I know. It has to be cooled down. It's just about ready, Shans.
Why don't you sit down and have some juice, okay?
Okay.
You know, if I had cancer today, I don't think anyone would try to determine whose fault it was in my family. But that's the first thing people think when it comes to schizophrenia. You don't like your braid?
It's pretty.
You want to come up? Up, up? 4 years after Ben's death, I think we'd just come to the point where we didn't care whose fault it was or what people thought. When we found out that Liv, my second oldest brother, had developed schizophrenia too.